Hey y'all, Double G here on the Double G Show with Paul Fontaine. You know, John LaRocca and I started doing this Sunday night show, like part 2 of the Fight Game podcast. And I realized that we're going to be doing like back-to-back shows in March. So I was like, AEW and NXT, we'll hold off on that. But I also saw that we didn't really have any post shows talking about the AEW show. I know Sam and Mel talked about it today on Power Bombshells, but Power Bombshells doesn't go in the actual audio feed. And so I was like, we should probably do something for the audio feed. By the way, the reason why Sam and Mel don't go in the audio feed is because their show is very like video specific. So I think it fits better, like exclusive on video. But anyways, so Paul was around and said that he wanted to talk about some of this stuff. And also, Paul and I have been having a very spirited discussion about Ricky Starks and WWE deciding to put him in NXT first rather than debut him in some, kind of surprise fashion on the main roster. So we're going to talk about that too. And we'll talk about that kind of when we talk about this NXT show, Vengeance Day. I think we should probably start with the AEW Grand Slam Australia show. The experience of the show going after the All-Star Saturday Night. Now, Paul and I, there's so much wrestling this weekend, but in our fandom, you had the hockey, the 4-team hockey tournament. I had the All-Star Saturday Night weekend, and then today was the All-Star game. So I was in San Francisco because that's where all the festivities were happening. And you're watching hockey, and then we still had to fit in all of this wrestling just to be.
And I had UFC.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, how was that UFC show?
It was okay. Luckily, there was a lot of finishes. Like I was literally watching TV from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until after midnight.
Oh, wow.
Between 2 hockey games, UFC, the 2 wrestling shows.
Yeah, my after doing all of that, like, and then still trying to watch SmackDown, which I did get through. I won't say that I like paid attention to it all that closely, but I saw a lot of the big stuff, and I thought there were like 3 segments that were really good, and a lot of filler, maybe 4 segments. And my whole summary after this weekend was like, why do they do this to us? Like, what is the benefit?
Are they doing it to us, or are they trying to do it to each other? That's like,
okay. Like, let's say that you are only a WWE fan.
Yeah.
You had 3 hours of SmackDown on Friday, and you had 2.5 hours of NXT on Saturday. And you have this whole block of A&E LFG rivals stuff tonight that I haven't even seen yet because I'll wait and try and get through some of that this week. But do you think now this is I actually have an answer to this question, but just kind of hypothetically, is there like how could it are they assuming people are going to pick and choose? Like, we don't expect them to watch everything. Or do they really expect their fan base to absorb everything and not really do anything else over the weekend?
Well, I think that they hope that their hardest of hardcore fans will watch everything, and everyone else will just watch what they can and catch up on social media with everything else. And even if that doesn't happen, they're just going to spend next week telling us everything that happened this weekend. Like on the shows, and that. So if you are somebody that actually watched those shows, you'll probably be able to get through Raw and NXT a lot quicker this week. Because fast forward. You're showing me what I already watched. So, you might get through that, 2-hour NXT in an hour and 10 minutes.
Sure. For sure. Yeah. I didn't watch every segment, and when this new Shield or this new Nexus or whatever this group is, just bombards
Retribution Shield is what the rap called it.
There you go. Retribution Shield. And then you have Ava out there just hemming and hawing about what she's going to do about it. Like, she showed zero concern whatsoever, as if her show was not being hijacked by these randos. And then you have the announcers going like, oh, that's Deion Lennox. We know him. Like, we thought he was cool. And then, you just kind of have to, well, we're going to figure it out. And in the next segment where you see Ava, she's palling around and goofing off with Santino. So no concern about this hijacker group whatsoever. And so to me, I was like, okay, we don't really have to pay attention to these guys because she didn't even take it seriously.
She's as concerned as Tony Khan is about the Death Riders, I guess.
Well, we know how well that has worked.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I mean you're right, and like unless maybe she's behind it. I mean, it's not like they haven't dropped hints that she's a heel. So I mean, that would be so dumb. But
my favorite thing about NXT, and this is I've only seen the women, and I'm not on TikTok, so I'm sure if I was, I would see a lot of these. But they'll take these songs and they'll kind of lip sync and do little routines to them. And the latest one that I saw, some just was in my Twitter feed, I think. It was like Lash Legend, like in the middle, and then there's like the women around them. And I think Ava is actually in the back, like dancing. I was like, oh wow, she's actually a human being. Like, there you go. I like that was the most I've been interested in her, like, and she's been on TV now for it feels like a year at least.
Oh, I think like 2.5. You remember she was in that Joe Gacy cult?
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. And well, because we were in NXT Orlando 2 years ago, and I saw her in that group, and she'd already been in the group for a while. So it's been a long time.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
She's she's on the slow train to the main roster. Whatever the slowest train possible you can get on before going to the main roster.
She could walk. That would be cool.
Well, I mean, here's what it shows, right? She's got the most powerful dad in all of wrestling, and she's still stuck in the mud in NXT.
Maybe she's just waiting for Aurora's old enough to take over.
No, those girls, if they want to, I'm sure they will be in prime spots on that television show. Okay, so All-Star Game, All-Star Saturday Night finishes, and I'm at a bar. So I actually did go to the Chase Center. We kind of just wanted to be in the area and see what was going down. They opened up a brand new sports bar called Splash, sort of in honor of the Splash Brothers, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And so we kind of moseyed over there. The line was about 50 people long. We're like, okay, we're not us. And then we found our way back to a different spot that was, I don't know, 5-minute cab ride away. And so we ended up watching the dunk contest and stuff at the bar. And so I was very interested because I was with my buddy Ben Cruz, who hosts Worldwide on Wrestling Worldwide on the Ringer show. But they have closer ties to WWE. AEW does not do a great job at PR when it comes to that stuff. Like you would think that AEW wants a lot of their folks on those kind of shows, but they don't really, as far as I know, they don't really push it that hard. So it is more WWE focused. So he is more of a WWE fan than an AEW fan. And then both of my sons and my youngest, both of my sons actually watched the Royal Rumble. And it was because of what I had told you in the Discord, which is we used to run these like little pools and we'd have like gatherings and get-togethers. And so that's what they remember. And then I reminded them that, the Royal Rumble was on. And so they both watched it. And my youngest, and this is kind of stuff that when we're thinking of new audiences, this isn't stuff that you and I think about because we're not on these services that much. But the way that he actually sees WWE content the most is TikTok, because his feed is mostly people posting old WWE videos, some stuff from his childhood that he remembers, and also some new stuff. And that's how he kind of knows what's going on, is strictly through these 90-second TikTok videos. So he decided to watch Royal Rumble. And he's asking me questions about stuff like, where's this guy? Where's this guy? Where's Randy Orton? How come Randy Orton's not around? And so, just telling him, and are they trying to get Braun Breaker and Roman Reigns together? I'm like, yeah, probably in a couple years. Like, there's definitely been some footprints in the sand for that. And so this AEW show comes on, and out of Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher, Konosuke Takeshita, on television, he doesn't know any of them. So he hasn't really watched AEW. But I'm talking to everybody about, Kenny, I got to interview him, and and he's really, really good guy, and I root for him. And he can't keep his eyes off of Will Ospreay, as you would expect, because Ospreay this is why Ospreay's in the lead match on this show, is so
Right.
that whatever casual audience exists after the All-Star game goes off. Which there was zero promotion about AEW during that whole thing, from what I understand. Because I didn't see all of the commercials because we were kind of moving around. I was talking to just in the Discord to our friend Kevin Ely, and I think he watched most of the NBA stuff, and he said he didn't hear anything about any promotion during the thing for AEW. So he's into Ospreay, but the sound is off. Like they had the sound on in the bar for the All-Star game. The wrestling came on. They turned off the sound and put on music. So we couldn't hear the audience. But we could see it, and the match was good enough to where you turned off all of the audio and you could still see what the story was. So his actual points that he's watching, and he's like, Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, really cool, just doing a lot of this great stuff. He's like, who's the guy who looks like Randy Orton? I was like, oh, that's Kyle Fletcher. And he's like, oh, I like the both of them together. Like they are, when Ospreay's on offense and then Kyle Fletcher has something to fight back, like they look like they are really great together. So he got those two things out. But you know what his main complaint about the match was? He said, why are they not tagging? Because the easiest crowd pop in this entire match is a hot tag to the finish. And I was like, I mean, I know why there's no tags. It's because they just wanted all action for that opening audience. And it was like a video game match, essentially.
Yeah,
it was a very well done video game match.
They might as well just made it a scramble or whatever they call it when you don't have to tag.
And this is why I hated the Moxley and Claudio tag, is because I was like, okay, you're making this no holds barred, and your other tag match is going to be almost the same without weapons. Like there's just going to be no semblance of an actual, this is not FTR in the ring.
Going in, you didn't know that, but obviously they knew that.
I just assumed because they're going to open that they were going to just go heavy with the offense.
That was my takeaway. Like, I was like, why aren't they tagging? Like, I think Omega and Takeshita were the legal men for the last 10 minutes of that match. And Ospreay was in there as much as Omega was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was crazy.
So those are his main takeaways, but I don't imagine he's going to know to turn on Wednesday to watch Will Ospreay, but it's possible that if he sees a TikTok and he watches it, then maybe he'll get more Ospreay stuff. I think that
maybe he'll be interested in Ospreay Fletcher on March 8th.
Yeah, but he would have no idea how to watch that match because we only got to see the first match. There was no audio, and then it was over, and then we left.
Now, if it was on Max, maybe he would, but he's not going to pay $50,
right? Yeah, I mean, he's just gonna steal whatever my account is, so that's how he'll watch it.
Fair enough.
That's how he watches the WWE stuff. That's how he gets Peacock, is through my account. So the other thing, as I was watching that match, and we'll talk about the actual version rather than this, no audio version. The other thing I couldn't figure out, why was Will Ospreay the biggest Kenny Omega fan in the match? Like he was pumping him up. He's covering him so that he didn't get beat up by the bad guys. Like their relationship has been so topsy-turvy in 3 weeks, and now Kenny Omega wants to die for this guy. Like how did or
the other way around?
Oh yeah, Will Ospreay wants to die for him. They didn't even really explain it in the commentary either. When I did rewatch the match, it was just they were just noticing that Will was really trying to fire up Kenny. But what was that about? That's the part I didn't understand.
I don't know. And the weird thing is Kenny he's such a thoughtful guy, and he puts a lot of thought into his matches and the stories and everything. And I got to think something like that would probably bother him, that this doesn't make sense. And when you watch Kenny, he wasn't doing that back. So unless that's a deliberate choice that they're making, to where, like Will is willing to take a bullet for this guy, but Kenny doesn't really care about him at all. If maybe that's the story. I mean, I don't like that story, but if the idea is, 6 months down the road, we're going to see Kenny versus Will, then maybe that's how we get there.
So the match was, I know you really liked it. No, I liked it too. I didn't think it was a classic because I think if they have a normal match on a pay-per-view where they're not worried about time and they can just go out there for 25 minutes, they can have a 5-star plus match just because all 4 of those guys are so great. And this was a specific thing. They had a specific agenda for what this match was. But I really liked it. It was kind of interesting. The babyfaces had most of the match as well. And that's not how AEW generally works, at least in the most recent version, because it's really all about heat, which we did see in that other tag match. But so I liked the fact that the babyfaces were winning. They looked great. They looked smart. They looked like heroes. And then even hearing them cut that promo where Kenny, again, the more thoughtful, kind of subdued guy who, he's challenging Takeshita because he knows Takeshita's had the upper hand on him. And then babyface Billy, Will Ospreay, cuts his, sort of meathead promo, but it just worked. And I was like, this team is so fantastic. They should be running wild. They should be the focus of the entire promotion. And yet, because we have this Death Rider storyline, we can't actually get there. We're waiting for whatever the end of this thing is. But this is like Hangman, Kenny Omega together stuff where you're just like, that's what I'm interested in first and foremost, no matter who has the title. And yet, we could put the chase for both of these guys. They could be in on the chase, and they both could be still the heroes, and who's going to get there first. And yet we have old Cope getting beat up and passing out. Second show in a row we've had someone pass out in a match instead of tap. And you look at that main event, and you're like, how is Moxley and Copeland going to be a main event of a show with Kenny Omega and Takeshita on it, and Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher in a steel cage? How does anybody want to wait until the end of that show to get to Mox and Cope?
Not only that, you've also got MJF and Hangman, probably.
MJF and Hangman. Yeah. Wherever they go with Tony Storm, who got over huge.
Yeah. Well, that's women, so I mean, it's a different, different storylines. But
I mean, I say this because she main evented this show. Yeah, not saying she's going to main event Revolution. I don't think that's going to happen. But this was like a nice thing to have. And Dave and I talked about it in Wrestling Observer Radio. He didn't think she was going to main event, and I go, well, how can she not if she's going to win the title?
Well, but you're saying right now though, like we just mentioned 4 men's singles matches, and the least appealing one, and probably the one where like you might, if you're ranking all 8 guys, the guys you might put 7th and 8th are the 2 guys fighting for the world title. Like that doesn't make any sense. And we just came off of this. It was a while ago with the tag teams. I remember there was a specific pay-per-view where the tag team championships were like the 2 least like pushed acts on the show. Meanwhile, we had 4 other tag teams on the same show, tag team matches on the same show. So we're getting the same thing here. And it's really strange because, and the other thing is none of these guys seem to be terribly interested, other than MJF, in getting that world title. Like they don't even mention it. It's not even a factor.
Yeah.
And that's, whereas in WWE, that's all anybody ever talks about.
Lady B does explain,
oh, there you go.
Why they were so into each other. It is a bromance, and if it's a bromance, I'm into the bromance because they're
it's unrequited on one end.
Yeah, but they're the 2 best guys. But one of those dudes is into it all of a sudden when he was not into it at all early on, and now Kenny, he's into it. So
he's just not that into you.
So Lady B said it was Valentine's Day weekend after all, bromance love. So Johnny has a question. And he says, why does Will want to face Kyle in a cage after beating him in the semifinals in a tag match? I don't sense that it's necessary for the feud. it's just a way to distinguish the matches that they've already had together.
See, if you were going to do this, to me, the correct finish would have been to have Don Callis and maybe even Cajun Archer interfere and cost them the match, and Kyle pins Will in Australia. So you get Kyle getting a big win in his hometown. Will takes a pin, and then you build to this cage match. Like, to me, that makes sense. Instead, you had the baby faces take the whole match, pin the heels clean, and now we need a cage match to prevent interference that never happened.
Yes.
That was the question I had.
Well, and so here's the other thing.
Oh, just shut up and enjoy it.
Well, here's the other thing. When it comes to cage matches, we know the cage match is not really going to stop people from interfering. Like, that's not what it is anymore. I mean, in theory, if we were to go back to, 1970s WWF, like, that's the theory of it. But there's been so many cage matches where people have interfered. And I would imagine Don Callis is going to slip a screwdriver into the ring. Takeshita is going to, interfere in some way. Maybe he doesn't climb the entire
the last one was Swerve and Hangman, right? And didn't Nana hand Swerve like a drill or something? Or pliers?
And look, here's the thing, which is we are looking at this through a specific lens.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that most of the AEW fans, they're going to look beyond it because it's just an exciting match that they know that they're going to love, which is totally fine too. Like, that is part of the appeal of this, is sometimes you don't, the fans are going to be just happy with it because it's going to be great. And that's kind of how I see it too. That's why I'm willing, we could go here, just nitpick a lot of this stuff to death. But the fact of the matter is, it's just going to be a great match. And if you're there, that's why I want to watch pay-per-views, is because I want to see the culmination of feuds. I want to see good matches, and I want to see big things happen coming out of them. So this perfectly fits there.
Yeah, I think Revolution is shaping up to be a really, really good show. And they typically, almost every year, it's like their best show of the year.
Yeah.
So,
last 2023, I think it was the Observer show of the year. And last year it was AEW's show of the year.
I think it was Observer as well.
Oh, was it Observer's
Revolution? Yeah, that was Sting and Darby.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, and I think in 2021, maybe even too. So, yeah. And then 2020 might have been, if not for that bomb not going off. Was that the same? No, that wasn't the same one. No, that was 2020 was the show of the year too.
Oh,
that was the one where Moxley won the title.
What were your thoughts going in on Harley Cameron? Were you pro Harley Cameron winning the title, or were you against it?
I wanted her to win the title. I thought she should win the title. I didn't think she was going to.
Yeah.
Because I know the natural argument against it is, well, she's not ready. She's not up to that level in the in-ring. Mercedes doesn't need to lose yet, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. But the fact is, they've put this title on Jade Cargill when she was green as grass. And they put it on Julia Hart. And Harley is at least as good as either of those two.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the key is whether she won or lost, and we talked about this going in, what are you doing with her after? And if they weren't going to do anything with her after, then you might as well just keep the belt on Mercedes.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of why.
That was my worry, which is, I know Tony probably has some grandiose idea of when Mercedes is going to actually lose a match. And when you're handed that, which is Harley just getting over, I didn't really sense that, not that he couldn't take advantage of it, but almost like, well, if I take advantage of this, my entire thought process is going to be how to get the belt back on Mercedes so that I could do the thing I want to do with Mercedes, whatever the end game is there. And so that's why I didn't think he was going to do it. And also, I think I'm totally open to the idea of her actually winning that title. It's a secondary title. The whole thing would be about how could you pivot Mercedes to get something out of it as well. But at the end of the day, I think based on the match that I saw was probably the right call.
Mm-hmm. Well, based on the match I saw on Thursday, it was definitely the right call because she had a horrible match with Billy Starks. And I was like,
who was calling that one?
That's the problem. And so you're gonna get that if she's a champ, because she's gonna be facing some women where she's gonna, well, maybe she's not gonna call the match, but they're gonna be the blind leading the blind.
I think
And
you'd probably get a lot of Taya and
yeah,
Deanna and
Serena.
veterans,
Serena
Serena.
Deeb. Yeah. But
So
then you do Amanada and you'd be like, "Ooh."
yeah. I will say I think she did a fine job. I wouldn't say it was a
Yeah,
great performance because there were things in there where, because she is so new to this, there were moments that the crowd just wanted to celebrate her, that had she paused and she just looked out to the crowd and fired up, they would have just went crazy. But I think in her head, she was like, I don't want to forget what the next thing is, because we have this
yeah.
chain of things to make this match good. And so a lot of that stuff didn't register, or she didn't allow it to register. And then, the finish was the finish, and Mercedes is
I
shitty,
I was
shitty finish.
worried I was worried going in that the crowd might not know her because she's fairly new. They don't have a huge television presence in that country. So you'd imagine people going to the show are probably going to be watching, or they're going to try to catch up on social media or whatever. But what I noticed was, like, when she came out and the music started, there wasn't much of a reaction. But then as soon as they announced who she was and where she was from, then you got that huge pop. And
Mm-hmm.
then what I noticed from her was, whenever the crowd was starting to quiet down a little bit, she would fire up and go, like, "Fear the wrath,"
Mm-hmm.
like her catchphrase, and the fans caught on and they started chanting, "Fear the wrath, fear the wrath, fear the wrath." So between that and chanting "CE no," like, the crowd really helped this match. It was fine in the ring. It wasn't a match of the year or anything
You
like
know
that.
where it lost me and where I realized that she wasn't gonna win is when she did more than one spot with the puppet.
Yeah,
I was like, "Okay, this is not a serious match. Mercedes is not gonna lose in an
to a puppet.
unserious, scenario." But at the same time, she should figure out how to involve the puppet in some way. But if you do it too much, then she becomes Santino, and you don't
or
want her to become Santino.
or Alexa Bliss with
If
her
she could
stupid
actually get
doll.
to Alexa Bliss, though, there, I wouldn't consider Alexa Bliss the greatest worker or personality, but Alexa Bliss definitely has a charm about her that the fans really like.
Oh,
We
I'm just talking about the doll,
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, making it the focal point of the match. Like, you can't
Sure.
do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the WWE went way too far with that the
Yeah.
last time.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah,
was
like,
like a character on the show.
I was thinking back, like, was Sasha Banks ever involved with that? I don't think so. I remember Charlotte Flair getting really frustrated with this doll, but, I don't think I think Sasha was on SmackDown at the time, but yeah, like, and she'll probably make a lot of money selling a lot of dolls, so good for
They
her.
should market the shit out of it, and
Oh, yeah.
that it should also it could be her version of the list.
Yeah.
If
Mini
she had
Monet, I like that, or she could do a new doll for every person she's feuding with, and then she can make more money.
Yeah, and if you remember the list was really all about also the timing of it.
Yes.
If she starts doing her thing and then the doll is kind of saved for like a proper moment so that crowd is anticipating when she's maybe gonna do a little ventriloquism, like she's gonna be, and she's so talented. I think she's going to figure out how to do it, the rhyme and the rhythm of it. The thing that she's going to have to learn how to do more, because a lot of this is video package stuff. So she's taping it in the back and they're putting it together nicely. Is the live promo. Like, that's kind of the next level with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see where she goes with that, because I was reading our friend Sam from Power Bombshells last week. The Street Profits did their video package where Montez said the violence will be televised. And Sam was like, they deserve to do that live. And I didn't actually have this conversation with her. She has her thoughts on that. She's actually, doing the write up of SmackDown, I think, every Friday for the website. Her website, what is it? Russell Inc. or something? I don't know. Whatever the website that Sam writes for. And that stuck with me because the thing that I thought was really good about the promo was that it was slickly packaged in a video. And they did another one this week which I thought was like one of the best segments on actual SmackDown. So in some ways, doing that video stuff, because it's pre-taped and sort of acted out, you can use the camera, tricks and everything to make it look slick. But what's going to connect with the crowd, it's going to be the live one. And so that's kind of the evolution of her, is if she can take this really incredible act that she can do on camera and they can package it together. And then if she can do some of that live, that's where the connection is going to come.
Well, she did a couple weeks ago in that Harley halftime concert, or last week it was.
That's the one I still haven't seen that.
Oh, that was exactly what you're talking about. She looked like she'd been doing this for 15 years when she was out there. Like that's her comfort zone, with a mic in front of a crowd performing. Like, as long as she's not having to be physical.
Yeah.
Like, and then the physical, that's what she's learning. But the rest of it, she's got it. So
yeah,
I'll give you a really bad booking idea. If Kenny, if Tony's listening, book her in an I Quit match. And then she pulls out the puppet and the puppet says, "I quit." And she wins the match.
That's so that reminds me of Rocket and McFoley from 1999.
No, but this would be live. This would be the ref actually hears the voice. Minnie Monet quits. I quit. And it's not Harley. Harley's voice isn't.
That would be wild. There would be a segment of the wrestling population who would inundate Twitter with
and there would be just as many defending it to high heaven. This is brilliant. The best thing I've ever seen.
WWE would get their best tweeters and go, "You guys need to attack this thing. This is ridiculous. They're ruining wrestling with this stuff. You guys need to tweet." Okay, so it was a solid effort, I thought, by Harley. And it wasn't Mercedes' best match or anything, but she I think she did a pretty good job, though the finisher sucks really bad.
I think I've seen her do it good, like maybe twice, and it's usually against like a really tiny woman, and Harley is not that.
So then we had the Death Riders against Copeland and Jay White. I hate these kinds of stipulations. At least in this case or this scenario, there's been enough fighting between these guys to where you're like, okay, it's fine. It makes sense. No DQ. It's a fight. We want to see them fight. The scariest thing in the world on the whole show was Adam Copeland jumping from the crowd to the floor. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're just coming off a broken ankle. Like, you're nuts. The finish caught me off guard. It gave me a really bad taste in my mouth. And what's so hard about this? I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day. Just being a fan of Jon Moxley, the human, and watching him just do things where I'm like, he kind of knows better, but at the same time, maybe he thinks it's good heel heat for the group and someone will finally get a payoff when they beat him, because it's turning in, poor X-Pac used to get credit for the term X-Pac heat, which is like essentially like turn off the TV heat. And I think the Death Riders are kind of close to turn off the or for us, it'll be hit the fast forward button heat. Like there's an insistence to force feed the audience this stuff that doesn't work. And I don't know if the idea is if we force feed it enough times, it's going to actually be real heat. But I think it's the other way. I think it's people just don't care. They care less and less and less and less. And the idea of this match should have been to create Adam Copeland as a serious contender. And he looked far from it. And if it's to fool the internet into thinking something or other, like who are you fooling? Like, it's your business, man. Like, you should just do the right thing.
The finish to me seemed obvious. Like, I mean, you could have had Cope spear Moxley, and then maybe like Jay White is the legal man at that point. So then after he spears Moxley, he goes after Claudio, gets him out of the way, and then Jay White gets the pin.
Mm-hmm.
And so you protect Mox in a way, like, because he's not losing to Cope. So we're still waiting to see that on the pay-per-view. But Jay White gets a pin. I know it's not, it's not his home country, but it's close enough. Or again, just have Cope pin Moxley. Like, you could do that, especially if he's going to be losing on the pay-per-view. But I think the idea is the longer this goes, the more it's going to mean when somebody beats him. But I think the problem is that you go too long, and it's going to be like people just stop caring. So whoever it is, whether it's Kenny, whether it's Will, God forbid if it's Darby, which is what I think it's going to be, and I hope I'm wrong. By that point, like people just don't care. And then
And we know some of the most ardent AEW fans, and they're like, we need to move on.
yeah. I mean, I would imagine, I know it's like House of Torture. It's probably a lot like the Bloodline, and anti-WWE fans or, non-fans were complaining about that. Like we saw it all the time. Every match is the same, the guys just about got him beat. But we're not even getting that. Like we're not getting just about got him beat any time. Moxley's just mowing through everybody with his band of goofballs, as somebody calls them.
There are heel involvements in how the finishes happen, but he's beating all these people clean. He's not like hitting them with a foreign object. He's not pulling tights. He's not holding ropes.
Choked them out.
Just putting people in choke and beating them that way. And yeah, I would love, at some point, maybe in 5 years, have a conversation about what the real idea was.
And to be fair, we probably have to wait and see how it plays out. And then maybe at the end of it, whoever wins the title, Moxley's going to look at it and say, hey, I did a good job. I got this guy over, which was my job.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. All right. So I'm not looking forward to their match. And if this whole thing was to belt Adam Copeland, I'm going to be out of my mind. Though the thing could be, and this is something you've called since the day, it happened, which is Copeland spears Mox and he's got him for the 1, 2, 3, and then Christian breaks it up.
Yeah.
And then tries to cash in at that moment and then somehow gets screwed out of his cash in. Like if that is the case, I still don't think you needed to beat Copeland in order to get the biggest pop for that happening.
I think I'd hate that even more than just Moxley pinning Cope clean, honestly. But
yeah,
at least we get that contract off of Christian. So
yeah. Okay, so then we got to a Kazuchika Okada and Buddy Matthews match, which Matthews made the most out of this opportunity, I thought. Though we cannot call that move the Matthews Law.
No, and you can't call it Murphy's Law either.
Either keep it Murphy's Law in like a wink kind of thing, or give it a new name.
No, they called it Murphy's Law.
No, I know, but that was accidental, right?
I don't know. I think that's the name.
Well,
just give it a new name like Sasha, like Mercedes did with all her moves.
From what I sort of understood, I think what happened is that they called it by the old name, and then I forget which announcer then called it by Matthews. Okay. But Matthews Law means nothing. Like there's no pun to Matthews Law. It's stupid. So they should just create a new name for it. Or Murphy's Law and like wink your eye when you do it.
Yeah, like Mercedes could have the bank statement. Like it's a generic enough term that I don't think WWE copyrights move names, do they? Like
I don't know.
Everybody and their dog uses AJ's move.
Yeah.
And they all call it the same move.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that the crowd in this one as well, like when Buddy Matthews came out, they didn't know who he was and they weren't really into it at first. They kind of knew who Okada was, but then when they started chanting Okada's a wanker, and then Okada got up to leave, and then when Buddy grabbed the mic and called him a wanker, that's when the crowd got into it. And then they were
really
behind Buddy.
Really smart. I don't know if that was planned or if they just if it wasn't, then they were thinking on their feet, and it was really smart.
Well, Buddy's been doing this a while, so I would hope that he's pretty smart. So yeah, it was a good match from him. And it's probably the biggest match he's ever had. Poor guy. I mean, he's had 3 wins in 3 years. I don't know how he wasn't voted most what's that underpushed or whatever it's called, underrated.
Yeah,
I voted for him and he didn't even get an honorable mention. I'm like, I look at this guy, I would have a belt on him. Like,
you mean isn't it most improved?
No. Most improved was Kyle Fletcher. This is underrated. Underrated. Like Konosuke Takeshita won underrated.
Yeah.
Like like this guy that all I do is talk about how great he is and wins most of his matches. But yeah, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, Buddy, now he can go back to his Hounds of Hell, or I think you called it at one point the Hounds of Black. Hounds of Black, I think he called them at one point, and it's like, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
HOH. Yeah.
So main event, Toni Storm beating Mariah May.
Yeah.
Now I think what's most interesting about this, because we thought perfect place to do it, culmination of this storyline. I'm not sure it was a home run in the whole storytelling of it, but I know some people who really loved it. I thought it was, it's like a B or a B plus, just on the whole, Toni coming back and having, turning, getting Mariah comfortable, and then, turning back into Timeless. It was a solid, like, I saw the effort. The effort was absolutely there. Where do they go? That is my real question, because this Timeless character, in order for it to have any sort of conflict, or she just beats everybody, and it's kind of in character, and the fans play along with the joke, and so I guess she even had some funny lines after for the live crowd that I saw people were cracking up about. But as an actual competitive women's champion, the Timeless character works against the people she wrestles, I think. And so I know the character is a winner in, probably merch and in a lot of the fans. And so I think they're going to have to be pretty smart about where they go and who she faces as champion, unless she just goes right back to Mariah, which they could do.
I would imagine that's, they'll do a rematch. But yeah, like once that's over, whenever that is, and I'm kind of thinking the rematch will probably be at Revolution, but yeah, what's next? Like, it's got to be like a very serious person that faces Toni, but it's also got to be someone who's credible. And right now in that women's division, they've got a lot of talented women. I don't know how many of them are credible right now. Maybe Megan Bain, if you can heat her up a little bit, could be somebody that Toni could have a feud with. But again, the problem is yeah, like Toni, she sucks the air out of the room with her promos. Like, she just dominates everything. So you really have to be strong to share a camera with, or share a screen with her. And Mariah is that, but I don't know who else. Mercedes would be that.
Mercedes would cut through the shit, but she has the other belt right now.
Willow could, but Willow is a baby face as well. So
Willow would play along with it in a certain charm, and then she's got aggression in the ring, so that I think that could work as well. But yeah, it's just, to me, and this is a criticism. You can criticize any creative person with this, which is, okay, you get to the destination and then it's like, what's next? And a lot of times the what's next isn't half as cool as getting there was. And I would just, I want to see something creative. I want to see something really good for Toni next, and also for Mariah next, because
I mean, maybe it's Harley, you build her up and give her some wins and do that. I think and I think where Mariah goes next, if it was me, I would maybe, after she's done with Toni, send her away for a month or two, have her come back and heat her up to face Mercedes at London this year. And you could do Mariah May and Mercedes in London, babyface Mariah, maybe, or babyface Mercedes against the heel Mariah, one of the two, and then she can kind of try to recapture what happened last year.
My worry is because my favorite in the division, as far as just watching wrestle, other than Mercedes, is Jamie Hayter, but she is so cold right now.
Yeah.
And like, if she was to face Toni Storm right now, I think she would just get overlooked completely, just because of the way that her character works right now. And so those are the things that I worry about.
Like, if she turned heel, like what if she turned heel and like attacked her or something and left her bloody, and then cut this promo saying, I think, didn't she, when she got injured, I think they had been feuding before that, at some point. So, they could kind of go back to that. So, yeah.
Transferring heat says, what happened to Camille? Like, we think she was let go.
I don't think she was let go. I don't know if she was even signed, but if she was, I think they're just not using her because she's not on ROH. I watch that every week and I haven't seen her at all. So Maybe they'll bring her back at some point, but I don't think she's ever going to get a big push again.
And it's unfortunate because she supposedly has a pretty decent role in this Queen of the Ring movie that's coming out in a couple weeks.
And they could take advantage of that. But
Yeah.
maybe that's when she'll come back.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the smart thing to do. Even if it means just, for like a 3-week program to lose to Tony, at least you get some use out of her.
All right. So we had Vengeance Day as well. And I keep I'm trying to figure out if we should call this NXT Vengeance Day or WWE Vengeance Day. Because
they call it WWE.
Yeah, they call it WWE Vengeance Day. Like they don't call it NXT Vengeance Day. And I forget who I was talking to about it. I think I was talking to John actually. And I was like, "Oh yeah, because they don't call it Raw WrestleMania or SmackDown WrestleMania. It's just WWE WrestleMania or WWE whatever pay-per-view." So the branding is always throwing me off. I have my my main issue with these PLE shows, but I'll say it again here, which is these shows are understandably very easy to watch, fairly well wrestled. They, move good enough. And I usually watch on delay so I can fast forward through a lot of the stuff that, people have to sit through live. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like anything really happens like used to happen on pay-per-views. And of course, you're not paying them $60 or whatever WWE pay-per-views cost the last time we had to buy them. It's like I see good wrestling every week. It's not hard. It used to be harder to find. It's very easy to find these days. Any TV show that you watch from any of the two main companies is going to have good wrestling. Now you get a title match or multiple title matches, so that's cool.
Got a title change.
But when I sort of thought back after watching Vengeance Day, I thought, okay, did anything cool happen? And I thought the coolest thing was maybe the Jordynne Grace at the end, though we've seen her in NXT before. We saw her at the Royal Rumble, so it's not like it was this like giant surprise. But having Julia Vaquer celebrating in the ring, which there was a little bit of like Benoit, Eddie Guerrero kind of thing there. I know they're not best friends or anything, but they're kind of the way that they're kind of paired in NXT. And then having Grace come out there and just, smile at them both. It was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. But like I said, the Retribution Shield group, I didn't think that they were cool at all.
No, that was flat.
The Santino thing was fun, and it looks like they are doing more TNA stuff. So that's cool, but there was like no big moment coming out of that. And at the end of the day, when I feel like that was a fine television show, but my lasting memory is there were some good matches. Like that's not what I want out of the PLE. So that's kind of what I felt like about this show. And the Obafemi thing was great with Theory and Waller. I thought the whole match, the story was great. The finish was a little too cute for my taste. Waller hitting his finisher on Theory just by Oba moving out of the way, kind of slapstick, kind of goofy. But Obafemi looks like a beast, and he comes out of it looking like a beast, and that was the goal, and that they didn't deter. But what did you think about Trick Williams losing just sort of like a normie?
Do you want my kayfabe answer or my real answer?
I want both of your answers.
Okay, kayfabe. Eddie's fighting for my people, man.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. So I was glad to see tomorrow's Louis Riel Day. Louis Riel, for those that don't know, was a Métis hero that in his time was hung as a traitor, and then later on the government realized that we screwed up, and now there's stamps named after him, there's buildings, and we have a holiday for him. So reparations on Black History Month. And that's what Keelan and Scott were talking about. And like I was shocked. And so when you talk about nothing happened, I mean, you're right. Like it was like a TV show, like one of those themed TV shows that they do with better wrestling. Yeah. For the most part. But the one thing that did happen was they literally they elevated Eddie Thorpe. So going forward, that may be the most important thing that happened on this show. Whatever the reason is, maybe Trick's getting called up. I'm kind of thinking, I'm putting tea leaves together and thinking perhaps Eddie Thorpe against Ricky Starks. And and you'll do that maybe at Stand and Deliver, and then you could move Ricky into the world title picture, or he goes on to the main roster, who knows.
Why
But
don't we have cheating anymore?
well, I mean, he
What's
crotched him, but I mean,
yeah, but
that's
that's
not
within the
cheating.
rules of the match. It just makes
Exactly, yeah.
Trick look like a shitty strap match wrestler.
Exactly, yeah, and this is supposedly his specialty, although I'm curious because John said that Eddie lost the first strap match, but Vic told me he won the first strap match, so
I should have looked. I didn't even.
John has more credibility than Vic, so I'm believing John LaRocca on
Hey
this
man,
one.
Vic was on SmackDown this week because
Oh,
Joe
God.
Tessitore was doing
I think
boxing.
that's why I hated that show. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. Yeah, so in terms of, like you said, so my real answer, I mean, I assume there's a reason for it, but I'm not sure that's what I would have done, even if he is going up. Like, unless, like, well, if you're calling him up, you must have plans for him. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but I don't like a guy who's been treated as an undercard guy in your developmental brand beating a guy who's maybe going to be your next John Cena.
I wonder if this is a little bit of an experiment to see if
Oh,
how many hurdles can you put in front of Trick and then the fans get behind him even more, because I still thought he was the most over talent on the show with the crowd. Like, the
uh,
crowd was getting into
yeah,
every comeback. The crowd was still there with the entrance. Every time he'd fire up, they'd be right behind him. We heard "whoop that Trick"
they
chants
really
in the
like
crowd.
Stephanie too. But yeah, you're probably right. But they hated Eddie too.
Yeah.
That's a key. And that was one thing actually before the finish that I really noted. And if you go to the Discord, you see I commented on it a couple times. The heat that he was getting, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, they did not like Eddie Thorpe. Possibly more than anybody on the show. So we did have that. They didn't like Austin Theory as well, but I think that was more like just the match and everything. But with Eddie, it was just he didn't do anything, and they were booing him. He was like Dom heat. So maybe it's going to turn out that was a smart thing to do. But I thought where you were going to go is how would Trick handle losing? Maybe that's a test.
Oh,
That's
like,
something
you
that
mean
they like
like
to do
in real life?
in real life. Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Although I
he's lost a lot, especially from how he started.
yeah,
But I just wonder if what they're testing, it's
is
like
yeah,
Triple H, right? If Triple H is like, hey, we are thinking about bringing this guy up this year. Let's kind of experiment with his character a little bit to see if he keeps if the fans get behind him more after a loss or more after a win. How do we make this journey harder to the title? Do they want to see him desperately win the title again? Because I mean, it's very clear, at least right now, it doesn't seem like they're going to do a Trick and Obafemi one-on-one match like anytime soon, whether they're saving that for Mania or not. But it seems like they are putting hurdles in front of Trick to to like wait
yeah.
to get there, wait
Maybe we're getting
to get
Oba
to
against,
Mania.
Retribution Shield #1.
I mean, I could,
The
yeah. They could do a gimmick with Eddie and Oba and try and, because this whole
yeah,
match with Grayson and Austin was just to give the idea of a handicap match for
the
Oba
the
to make
one
him
the
look
one
more
thing
impressive.
the one thing I didn't like in that match was, Austin Theory got a visual pinfall on Obafemi.
Yes, I didn't like that either.
Yeah,
But if you think of it from the perspective of these are WWE guys, and
yeah.
the main roster is kind of the target for Oba, like, I get it from that perspective, yeah, but I didn't like it in when it happened either. I was like, "Really?" Like,
Yeah,
I want this
like,
guy to be as strong as humanly possible.
at least have him kick out, while,
That's what I was thinking too.
yeah, yeah,
So
so
Transferring Heat told us that
okay.
Eddie did beat Dijak in the strap match, so
So
thank you for looking
John
that
was
up. So
wrong.
LaRocca was wrong.
Oh, well.
Put that in the LaRocca was wrong folder.
And Eddie is now the king of the strap match, so we can add that to his
Yes.
resume. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so some of the other matches, Javon Evans and Ethan Page. I can't. I don't know if I like what they did necessarily because it makes me feel like it's a different time frame of booking in WWE. It really makes me feel like, oh, because you want Evans to win, we're just getting heat because Paige gets heat, and the longer we and then when Evans finally wins, then it doesn't mean anything because his fans don't care anymore. I don't think we're there, but that was kind of like a little. I was like, why do I have this feeling a little bit? The one thing I noticed in that match, though, Javon Evans cannot punch to save his life. What the hell is going on? Don't they have punching class in
Well,
NXT?
yeah, but he's too busy in his jumping class. Um, they have like there was a story in that match, and if you watch the pre-show, which I did, I skimmed through most of it, but I
Mhm.
like to watch the promos. And he had done a sit-down interview with one of the backstage people, and he had a line in there where he said, "I'm not coming to take your smile, I'm coming to kick your ass."
Mhm.
And I thought that was a great line. And then when you watch the match, that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
He wasn't wrestling his normal way. He was being more aggressive than he usually is. He wasn't doing a lot of the high flying. Like he was trying that cutter a few times, but even that, like, is a cutter the wisest thing to do when you're coming off reconstructive jaw surgery? So like I
That
think
that's
that
that's the stupidest angle I've seen in quite a long time, by
yeah,
the way.
yeah, and now he's wearing a mouth guard. But so I think that, like you can do that retribution storyline, not, like the coming
Not the
back
group, yeah.
retribution. Not I'm not talking about the group.
The
But
revenge.
yeah, so you can do a rematch here
Yeah.
and Javon can go over. I mean, he has to go over if they do a rematch. Like, this is the guy. Like, this is the guy I want to see in the main event of Stand and Deliver in 2026.
Well, I think the other thing is I think the reason why I thought that is because they just came off the upset win of Eddie Thorpe beating Trick, and then the
Yeah.
next match is Paige beating Javon, so it's like back-to-back heel wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ethan Page is doing a really, really good job. I
Mhm.
don't I don't I don't know if he can do that same character on the main roster, though. I think he's kinda just like a bigger not even bigger. I'm sure The Miz and him are probably similar heights. He's just kind of like The Miz, like, just
Better
a heel.
wrestler, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's I somewhere between that and, a little bit of Chad Gable. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the level he's gonna be at. Like, I don't think he's gonna be a big star, but if he can be the guy that goes in there, whatever Bobby Roode's role was
Yeah.
in, when he was on there, that's kind of where I see him.
And then we mentioned the Stephanie Vaquer win. The match was alright. It was,
Yeah, I thought it was good. I liked it.
she's very popular. I like her a lot. I don't know if there was, this crazy feud or anything to get the people really into it. I think we all thought Vaquer was gonna win. Um, so that was that. And then we had the tag team match with Frazier and Axiom against
That was
Josh Briggs
great.
and
This
Inamura.
Inamura guy, like, they've been hiding him backstage. It's almost like when TNA did that to Okada. Like, he's great. Like, I couldn't believe
He's
him.
so different from any
Yes.
other wrestler that they have in the company.
Yeah, and he's over. Like,
Yeah.
they were chanting his name. I mean, he's been on TV twice, so good for him. I hope I see
What
more of him.
don't you have a bad taste in your mouth though with Josh Briggs being involved in anything? Like
Not
like
really. I mean, he had that great match last year with Obafemi and Dijak. Remember that was like was like match of the year in NXT last year.
oh,
It was
was it?
Yeah, yeah. It was great. I think it was on this show last year too, actually, or
Interesting.
it might have been Stand and Deliver. But yeah, it was a great match.
I just see goofball every time I
Oh,
see him.
no, I kinda see him as, Scott brought this up on the Wrap, and I agree with him, so I'll give him credit, but or maybe it's someone in the chat. It actually might have been Fernando, who's
Okay.
in our chat here.
Yeah, by the way,
Um,
what up Fernando? What up Maria
yeah,
Graciela?
like, kinda like a modern day JBL, but not like the corporate JBL, like John Bradshaw Layfield, like in the Acolytes or even before the Acolytes, like, he's kinda like that.
So
So,
he's a dick backstage too?
probably.
No, I
Yeah.
hope not.
I'm just
I hope no one's as bad as him.
kidding. No.
All right, and then you had the main event, and
Yeah.
I the second they added Cora in this match, I was like, "Why?" And then
Mm.
LaRocca told me, "Well, maybe it's because they don't wanna beat the other women," and I was like, "Okay." And then Roxanne is the one who eats the pin, so that wasn't the reason.
Maybe they just want her to get experienced and get people to see her at that level. That's the only explanation I come. She wasn't bad. Like she didn't add anything to it.
No, not at
And it
all.
definitely would have been a better match without her in it. But it wasn't a bad, like, it was a good match, really good match. Like, I really enjoyed it, and she didn't stand out in a bad way. I heard Brian on Brian and Vinny's show was saying that, or maybe it was on Observer, that she was botching a lot of Bailey was botching a lot of spots. I didn't notice, but
I'd have to watch it a little bit more closely. I will say one thing about this though. When Julia came in, I thought, okay, like this is a woman who is just going to run circles around all of the women in NXT. Roxanne is more main roster ready than Julia, I think. And
well,
that some of that is because of style. Roxanne just understands their style better.
she's been there for 3 years.
Roxanne is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
She's a fantastic wrestler.
I saw her in Ring of Honor in, I want to say, either 2019 maybe, and I actually predicted at that time that someday she might be the biggest star in all wrestling. Like, not female, like, biggest star. Like, that's how impressed I was with her when she was 18. So, like, in some ways she's regressed since that point, but in other ways she's improved. It's the personality that she's working on and she's developing. But it's funny because back then that personality, I think, could have just gone straight to the main roster. She had that girl next door appeal. It was pure, genuine, honest, and it was great. Now she's playing a character, and she's real good at it. But that's what they want. They don't want real. They want WWE.
Yeah, and transferring, he made a great point by saying, if Bailey was off, she's just been traveling cross country every week, working every show. She was actually in Oakland or San Francisco. I don't remember where the celebrity game was, if it was at Oracle in Oakland or if it was at the Chase Center, but she was in the Bay Area on Friday night, had to fly to DC by Saturday showtime.
Afternoon. I think that show started at 6.
Yeah.
So she would have had to have been there. Well, I mean, she's the main event, so maybe she wasn't there at the start of the show, but they probably didn't have a lot of time to work on the match. I mean, unless they did it on Tuesday, but
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, that could have been it. That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, no, great. I can't wait for Roxanne to go up.
Well, we're gonna see her tomorrow night on Raw. So,
transferring, he actually said that she flew back for the All-Star game today.
Wow.
I didn't see her, so but I also haven't checked her social media to see. But that's crazy.
And then I don't know where Raw is tomorrow, but she's probably got to go there too.
Yeah. Woo.
Yeah.
Woman's earning her money.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this Ricky Starks thing. So last week we saw Ricky Starks show up on NXT Tuesday night, just in the crowd, people chanting Ricky Starks at him. He cuts his promo. You know who I am. You're waiting for the revolution to be televised. But by his promo, I am like, oh, he's going to be here for a while, just based on what he said. So then he wasn't even at the PLE. He does, and maybe he was there, but he wasn't in front of the live crowd. He does like a taped video saying that he's going to be on NXT on Tuesday to sign his NXT contract. Now this goes back to kind of the rumors around why he was on the shelf in AEW. And I was saying, well, Tony's biggest fear is that this dude just shows up on SmackDown, at WrestleMania, on Raw, next to Cody, and does, and just has the splashiest debut in, because of he's the crossover from AEW and he has ties to Cody and like that crew. And, Tony holds on to him. He's not on TV. I actually saw him at an indie show sometime last year. He's saying like, hey, I'm ready. They don't want me to work. Like he's putting his story out there and he's just on the shelf. And if Tony Khan's biggest fear is, okay, now I look like a doofus, a doofus who lets another guy go who WWE turns into a giant star. And WWE said, Tony, you don't have to worry about this one, brother. Not only are we not going to debut him on the main roster, but we're going to debut him and make him a focal point, at least what it looks like, of NXT. I have heard some pro arguments. John LaRocca was fine with this plan, which amazed me because this dude grew up smack dab in the Attitude Era. I have heard from some of the more hardcore WWE fans, but the problem with those takes that I've seen is that they pray at the altar of Triple H and by proxy his decision making on where Ricky should end up. And I even told my buddy the Pro Wrestling Joker, I was like, if wrestling was a religion, and I'm not comparing it to religion, but some fandoms can be kind of compared to religions. I was like, I don't pray at the Tony Khan altar. I don't pray at the Triple H altar. I don't pray at the Vince McMahon altar. I'm like literally agnostic. I just want to see things happen so that wrestling is even bigger because of it, or wrestling succeeds even more because of it, especially after having to go through that most disgusting promotional act thing in the Observer Awards that Dave and I went back and forth for a few minutes. Like when I have to talk about that stuff, yeah, it's kind of a downer. It's like, but if you're covering it, you have to talk about the good, you have to talk about the bad. Sometimes you have to talk about the ugly because it's snooze. And so Ricky Starks being on NXT, give me your argument, because I think you think he should be on the main roster right away too.
Well, not necessarily right away, but
give me your argument as to why this was not a bad decision.
So the bad decision, let me get this out of the way first. The bad decision was them deciding, and this would go to talent evaluation as opposed to booking plans, in my opinion. The bad decision was to look at him and say, okay, this guy is not at the Cody, the Punk, even the Rollins, like pick your name, level. This is a guy who, maybe he'll be something someday, but right now his best place for us is NXT. That's what they thought. And given that that's what they thought, that's why I'm saying that they shouldn't have brought him to the main roster, because if that was their mindset, bringing him to the main roster, he's doomed for failure, because they're just not going to push him. They're going to do that big splash to get, all the headlines and, social media buzz and everything. And you pointed out beautifully, correctly, like whatever he got from NXT would be 100 times bigger on Raw or SmackDown, because there's that many more people watching. It's that more relevant, even in the WWE sphere. But at this particular time of year, bringing him onto, a Raw in the middle of February, do you have plans for him in WrestleMania? Probably not. So what's he going to do for the next 2 months? So then your choice is, well, we have big plans for him.
He can lift weights.
Yeah,
that's what they would.
That's what he should do. But I mean, the key is like, so if you do have plans for him post Mania, and they probably do, then the idea would be, well, we're going to sit him on the shelf for 2 more months. And, maybe in their mind, they'd rather have him in front of the camera. Here's what I think their mentality is. Whether or not they think maybe they see him as a future Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn or Finn Balor or Shinsuke Nakamura. All these people started in NXT. So they're looking at him like, yeah, he may be something someday, but we want to get a look at him in NXT for now. The other thing that we haven't mentioned, and we haven't even discussed this, is he even going to be Ricky Starks? Like, they have not mentioned his name once.
But that's his real name. Why can't he use his real name?
I don't believe it is. I don't think it is. Hang on, let me Google it. Okay, well, so if it is, I mean, even if it is his real name, well, if it's his real name, they've already shown that they can use it. They can use his real name. Ring name Ricky Starks.
Because it's a great name. Ricky Starks is a great
name.
Oh,
I don't know. There's nothing on Wikipedia that says he's got a different name. For some reason, I thought I'd heard that he owns his name, which, I mean, hope he owns his name, but I mean, he's copyrighted it for use. So maybe they don't like it. Like, I don't know why, but Oh, it's not, but he owns the name. Transferring Heat says so. I don't know if that's true or not. I'll take his word for it because that's what I'd heard as well. But maybe they want to change it. Like, what was wrong with Fergal Devitt? I guess they want to have Finn Balor. What was wrong with Kenta? Well, they wanted Hideo Itami.
I'm seeing Richard Starks
Okay.
as his real name, but it doesn't look like the internet has a lot of definitive information on it.
No, and because I think when he showed up in AEW, he'd come from the Indies, and that's all he was ever known as. Oh, Richard Starks, yeah, okay.
Well,
Either way,
we'll see. Well, I'm sure we'll hear more about it.
Oh, you know what? And I saw this on the Observer board, and occasionally there's a nugget in there. This may be as dumb as they just want to be able to say, "Oh, the internet with the dirt sheets were wrong." He is Ricky Starks.
Stupid. So here's Transferring Heat's point, which I will riff off of because I actually have a counter to this point because I've seen this point and I've argued this point. So Transferring Heat says NXT needs top male stars. I think it's that simple. He probably gets lost in the shuffle right now. I do not disagree with that, by the way. They need top male stars for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think I'm going to agree with what you're going to say next.
Well, the problem with being lost in the shuffle is that he doesn't have to debut right now. Like you create the whole thing about this is you create a plan. Like look at what they did with Penta, right? They created a plan, and I think the debut was about as big as anything that they plan on doing right now with Penta, though they have a little bit of a cheat code to pair him up with Ray. They're going to have another cheat code when his brother comes, and then they can dominate the tag team industry as a single.
And they've got the merch too.
As a single right now, he's not going for titles is my guess. That he's
he'll probably be in if anything, he'll be in like a multi-man match at WrestleMania
because he wasn't in any Elimination Chamber qualifiers or anything, right?
No, doesn't he? I think is he doing a tag team match? Him and Ray against
him and Ray.
Day?
Yeah,
yeah,
which will be great. It'll be so fun.
Yeah.
And so the whole key to this thing is having a plan. And if the way that I think about booking, I've never booked pro wrestling, by the way. So I always say that because I'm not saying it as like, oh, I know how to do this better than other people. The idea of booking a talent is to take advantage of the opportunity and think about what the apex of that is. And if you think about what the apex of Ricky Starks is, you only have to go back to when they debuted Cody Rhodes. And And Cody Rhodes in AEW was a star, was a babyface who got booed, seemed to be unhappy. He left, obviously, was unhappy. And the biggest question mark around Cody Rhodes coming into WWE was, what's going to happen after his debut? Are they going to punish him for being part of AEW? He never was over in WWE at a high level. He's a mid-carder for life. Do they see him as a mid-carder? Kind of the same questions we have about Ricky Starks. And I'm not even comparing them as talent. Right. Cody's a little taller. Cody's blonde. He had a history that whatever excuses you can make.
I mean, the fact he had a history there and also the fact he was an EVP and everybody knows it. So in that sense, it was like stealing. Like, for instance, if they had gotten the Bucks, like I don't think the Bucks are going to NXT, because you're taking the heart and soul of AEW. Ricky Starks was not that.
He's not, but he was also having great matches with someone who they also want to steal, who is MJF, right?
And that's why they want him. That's why they signed him. But I mean, you can only look so far as Andrade, and here's what I compare. I compare Andrade and Ethan Page. Both of them came in last year around the same time, a couple months apart. One of them went to the main roster. One of them went to NXT. Andrade is lost right now.
But none of them cut insane promos on Dynamite. Ricky Starks has cut some fantastic promos on Dynamite. And when you think about WWE,
it's promos.
You think about talking more than you think about
actually, you're not. That's not 100% correct. Ethan Page cut some great promos on Dynamite.
But they told us who he was in AEW.
Well, they did when Brandy said we only signed you because we couldn't get Josh Alexander.
Like
But
they
yeah,
flattened him like immediately,
yeah.
and they didn't
But
flatten Ricky immediately.
no, that's true. But they did. Like, remember, he had the match with Kenny. He had a match with MJF where he cut this like from the heart, like just unbelievable promo that people were raving about. Of course, he lost.
Yeah.
But these were like big time promos, big matches. He had that whole 6-month run with Dan Lambert as his mouthpiece, with him and Scorpio Sky, Men of the Year. Like, that was a highlight at that time. That was some of the best stuff they were doing.
Yeah.
But that was what, 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah.
Whereas Ricky was, a little over a year ago.
So, but the sort of the point I was trying to make is WWE tells us consistently they do this better than anybody else. They take characters better than anybody else. Their system is better than anybody else.
Yep.
So Ricky was doing upper mid card stuff in AEW, but he was also injured sometimes. So there is an asterisk. If you have an asterisk, it's one, he's a little smaller than most of their guys, and two, he can get hurt.
Could that be part of it too?
It could be. It totally could be.
Could they be worried like, hey, we'll give him 6 months in NXT. Let's see if he stays healthy. Whereas if you bring him on the main roster and he gets hurt second week in, now all of a sudden you got to scrap a bunch of plans.
But the reason Cody is in the place that he is, it's not the only reason, it's part of the reason, is because they debuted him in the way that they did.
Of course.
They looked at that as, let's try and make the best Cody Rhodes humanly possible with our machine and our promotional vehicle. That's what they said. Now, they were in a different time period, because today they're so much more successful than they were. They were heating up, but they were not. I wouldn't say they were hot when Cody came in. Cody helped them get to hot. And so maybe you take more risks, and maybe you're looking for bigger things, and now you're kind of resting on laurels a little bit.
And that's the key, I think. They're not taking risks right now.
But if I look at this as, how do we take advantage of opportunity? If you brought Ricky in hot and he actually worked like Fatu came in hot, right? Comes in part of the bloodline, which is why. But
that's a great argument, by the way, to my points. Like, I didn't think Fatu as much. Like, I'd seen him in MLW, and I knew he was a good wrestler, but I didn't think he was this.
Yes, and he came in at a high level because you're looking at, okay, what is the apex of who he can be, and if we're good at this, we can actually hide some of his weaknesses, shine a flashlight on the things that he does great, and get him over like crazy. And so that's where I'm really frustrated, because I want to see the Ricky Starks that Triple H goes, I can make that dude a star. That's what I am not being allowed to have.
And my hope is, and I think this is possible, my hope is that we do see that Ricky Starks in NXT, and then Triple H says, okay, let's bring this guy to the main roster, and we've got a plan. He's going to be with Cody. He's going to be with Punk. He's going to, whatever, but that's the plan. Whereas right now, it's almost going to be like whatever he does for the next 6 months is not going to be relevant to the next 3 years, and I know your point as well. Like, you're kind of slotting him, by telling the fans, okay, we debuted Fatu on the main roster. We debuted, whoever else, on the main, Cody, Punk, whatever. But this guy we started in NXT. So you're kind of telling them, okay, we don't see him at that level. I understand that argument.
You miss the moment, though, by doing it.
Well, or you get a second moment, maybe not
and
quite
it's
as
not
big.
going to be as big. It can't. I mean, we can't actually measure that, but
it's hard to say. Like, if he debuted on the Raw after Mania, would it be as big as Penta? Probably not. But
I think it would be. If they did it right, it would have a much more of an impact on Penta, because there is a part of the fan base that understands that he and Cody are friendly. He and Cody are boy. Whether I don't know if they're like best friends or whatever, but there's a relationship there.
Seed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's, oh, anybody who is close to Cody, when they're done in AEW, they're on Team Cody, and you can create that relationship, whether that exists or not. It's all perception.
Well,
And it's
and
all made up anyways.
we know MJF as well as I think is
Exactly. It is. It is setting everything for these moments, and it's connected to Cody, and it works so tremendously well with Cody. Why can't we get another bump up and to the right every time we bring these guys over? Like, just that relationship is there.
Can I ask you something I haven't asked in
Yeah.
our discussions about this? Looking at the AEW roster right now, because I actually did this. Other than MJF,
Mm-hmm.
who
would
on that
WWE
roster,
take?
like, who do they want? Like, right now, I don't know any of them.
Well, the first and foremost is Swerve, but they can't get him.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Swerve, but I don't think they'd want Ospreay now. I don't think they'd want Okada now.
I think that I think they'd want
like out of
Ospreay.
spite.
If they were being honest with themselves, they would.
Oh,
They
Kyle.
wouldn't say
Kyle
it.
they'd want.
They wouldn't say it publicly. They'd absolutely want Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle.
They
for
would.
sure.
They probably wouldn't be public about Ospreay because of all the stuff that they've said. Takeshita would be an interesting one, just because they don't have a great track record with the Japanese wrestlers.
Takeshita, if you're listening, don't go to WWE. Just a friendly advice. Kyle, they'll push you to the moon. Take the money. Which Tony or Hunter,
whoever gives you the biggest offer and the best
because
possibility to
10 years from now, you're going to be headlining All In or WrestleMania. I'm pretty confident of that.
So here's my last argument, and then we'll get out of here. So the other thing that I've heard is, and John the Rocker brought this up, and we do that podcast on the Observer or F4W. We didn't do it here, but if NXT does tour, they're gonna need top acts, and right now, they can't tour because they're Collision essentially with selling tickets. So let's say that they actually do need, they do beef up the NXT roster and they bring in some bigger names and some, to that indie audience or whatever the hardcore audience is. And let's say that Ricky comes in and Ricky moves business. And people are telling me NXT needs business movers. And my direct reply to that is, well, if he moves business, he's not going to be there. So they're just going to take him, and then he can't move business there anymore. So it's kind of like a, rock in a hard place and catch 22 in that scenario.
Well, I mean, maybe not right away, but I mean, we all we have to do is look at the history. I mean, they from 2015 to 2020, they were touring and they were selling out, or maybe not selling out, but they were doing like 8,000 to 10,000 crowds in big arenas all over the country whenever they would do these quarterly shows. And that was with guys from the indies. That was with your Adam Cole, with your whoever, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Roode,
pre-AEW,
yes, that is a key.
Yeah,
I mean, because all those guys that they would have had ended up going to AEW,
and
eventually.
Now AEW is more market. There's more in the marketplace because of
and
AEW.
they're not selling 8,000 to 10,000 buildings. I mean, they're doing it quarterly, which is what NXT used to do. I've said this from day one. AEW right now is what Triple H wanted NXT to be. Like, literally, like Tony Khan is living out Triple H's fantasies back then. Now obviously he's got a bigger thing in his plate.
If he had the money to run against his father-in-law,
or if his father-in-law would have just let him do whatever he wanted.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the time frame, but when Tony Khan comes up, when he's like asking around, so this would be 2018-ish time frame. Do you think if there was a possibility to connect with Triple H, he would have wanted to connect with Triple H to say, "Hey, dude, I have the money to run against your father-in-law."
Oh, like to sign him?
Yeah, if he was
Oh,
like,
okay.
if he was okay. So and
I
here,
thought you were going the other way, like he'd want to go work for him.
no.
Um,
I'll explain.
no, I think I know what you're saying. Yeah, like
But I'll explain. I'll give the context, which is what happened. So Triple H, NXT is the dandy of wrestling because people are so tired of WWE. NXT is killing them on their with the small brand. Triple H is kind of puffed up as, oh, maybe he should take the reins from the old man. And Vince hated that.
yep.
Vince wanted to punish him at, any, I don't know about punish, but I'm sure it was a problem. Right. And so AEW comes along and Vince basically puts NXT and says, well, if you're so good, kill these guys. Like we shouldn't have to deal with these guys. NXT should beat them. And Triple H and NXT did not. They did not beat AEW and kill them. So what does Triple H get out of losing to AEW? He's fucking demoted.
Yeah, I mean, he was close to getting fired, I think.
He's demoted. He is blamed. He's, he internally, I'm sure he was blamed by Vince for them losing to AEW. And then he has then he's kind of doing, I don't even remember what he was doing. But
It
then
was like he was like an assistant, like in talent evaluation or something. Like it was like basically like JR's old job, I think.
and it's not until Vince, the Wall Street Journal stuff happens, that
Mhm.
Triple H then takes over for Vince because Vince is out of the company, or Vince is,
Yeah, and
forced out.
at first it was actually Stephanie, right? And then she stepped aside, and then it was him and Nick.
So there's a timing element of this, and the reason
Mhm.
why Triple H failed in Vince's eyes is because AEW ran against them. But I wonder, in 2018, Triple H probably believes he should be head of WWE Creative because WWE is so shitty at this point, and he's doing great in NXT, which only makes Vince probably just have issues with him.
Mhm.
I just wonder if there was ever an opportunity for a connection for Tony Khan to go, hey, dude, like, I'm thinking about this thing, looking for
I
some more
mean,
people.
I would think on Tony's end, maybe, but I think on Hunter's end, it would have been he would have had that same mentality that everyone that came up in WWE and worked under Vince had, that this is just a little, I mean, in his words, pissant company. And so I don't think he would have done it, but I think Tony would have been interested.
And
You know,
ultimately, probably what Triple H was hoping was that Vince would just get old and
yeah, yeah, and
eventually life out of it, and then it
I,
would
you
kind of be
know,
his and Stephanie's to deal. So, it's just an interesting what if.
it was. I mean, you talk about 2018. I mean, I know from as far back as 2016, somebody who fits the description of Tony Khan, but I don't know for sure that it was Tony Khan, was poking around and looking at the idea of buying Ring of Honor.
Yeah, Ring of Honor. We heard,
and
yeah.
and looking at like what is that company worth, and then he asked somebody who he trusted that could evaluate, and the guy gave him a number, and ROH wanted double that number, and that's why it didn't happen. That was in 2016. So then in 2018 he basically just created his own company and took everybody from Ring of Honor.
Well, and this is after Cody and the Bucks are
Yeah, yeah.
moving numbers at Ring of
Yeah,
Honor.
actually, yeah, because that's before Cody, I think.
Yeah.
This is when Jay Lethal was on top with Roddy and the Briscoes, and War Raiders were still there, I think. And yeah, this is 2015, 2016.
I've told this story before, but I'll just tell it here just for the people who haven't heard it. First time I heard the name Tony Khan, I'm at Dave's. Dave comes over to me and he's like, "Who's Tony Khan? Do you know that name?" And I was like, "I don't think so, but there is a Khan who runs the Jaguars, who's the owner of the Jaguars." And he goes, "Okay." Comes, 10 minutes later, comes back. It's his son. It's Shad. Shad and Tony are, they handle the Jaguars, and he was telling me this other stuff. And so I was like, okay, so what's going on? And, Dave, he has so many great relationships. And back then, he's probably talking to Cody and the Bucks, I'm assuming, like a lot, like, because they're on the indies and they're trying to figure out what the move is. Are we sniffing around WWE? They just Cody had, did some New Japan stuff. They're ROH, and so Dave's always like you all listening to this would be amazed at how many top stars come to Dave for contract advice. You would be really amazed. So Dave goes, I think he's told this story. If he hasn't, I might get in trouble, but so be it. It's late at night. Dave says, I was figuring out some stuff, and Jericho, I was asking Jericho a question, and Jericho said, Tony Khan, look him up. And so then he didn't outwardly tell Dave what was going on, but he wanted Dave to kind of put the pieces together or whatever. And I just found it so crazy because we were, I don't know exactly what you were doing for the Observer in 2018.
I was just writing, but I'd started the Facebook group, and I know we had a private chat going.
Yeah.
And I know you had a lot of information.
Yes.
That you couldn't share.
I couldn't share it. Dave wasn't going to share it. Like,
and
he did eventually.
Yeah.
He eventually wrote a story because SE Scoops had posted something, so that kind of gave Dave a little bit of the freedom to go, okay, like, this is wrong. Like, this is what I know.
I remember we were doing like a football draft, and you told us a bunch of stuff that you knew that, like, we couldn't leave this room kind of thing, and you deny you ever said it. And it was like, and you didn't even, like, it wasn't even half of what you knew, but it was the stuff you figured you could get away with telling us.
Right. And everyone knows the origin story now.
Yeah.
It's Kenny and Cody.
I think JR was involved somehow in what you were telling us, and
Tony Khan, Jericho, Jim Ross. They were all, all of these big players were involved in this startup. And, but just going, like, I will never forget Dave in his very sort of curious mind coming to me and go, do you know Tony Khan? What do you know about Tony Khan? And I was, and so, and I did do a Google search to make sure that Shad was a Khan and I didn't screw his last name up. But, just that whole time frame is tremendous. What I wish I would have wrote down a lot of it. But you know what? I bet you if I read Dave's early stories on it, a lot of stuff would pop back into my mind. And so I say that to say this, which is you and I and Jeff Hawkins are going to do a demo of a show that we've been thinking about doing around watching some old events and kind of reviewing. If people understand the Rewatchables, which is a podcast that Bill Simmons does, we aren't completely cribbing from the Rewatchables, but we are taking some of the kind of the idea of the Rewatchables, and we want to do it around wrestling shows and see if it's interesting or not. And the first one we're going to do is the very first Double or Nothing. And the reason why I picked that one is, one, it's kind of timely with Double or Nothing showing up on Max. So it'll be easy for people to rewatch if they want to rewatch with us. But also because I want to go back and read all of those issues and remember everything that was going on at that time, because I've forgotten a lot of it. And I have all of this footage of that first ticket, the pre-sale to Double or Nothing. I think it's like in February. We're in Vegas at the MGM, and it's cold as hell. And I'm filming the press conference that they were showing on YouTube or their whatever account that they were showing it. And then Dave is taking me, like, he's like we're supposed to go to the media, and he just doesn't go. And then I follow him and we zigzag all to where all the talent is. And it's just like those moments, like those are things I'll never forget about, that time frame. So
we were both at the show, and I don't think either one of us have seen it back since.
Yeah, I only watched the first match. And as a trivia note, do you remember what the first match was?
Well, on the pre-show or on
The Max broadcast.
I don't know what but I think was it Darby Allin and like Kip Sabian or something?
So on the broadcast, they open up with SCU versus SEMA and the other guys. What was their group called?
Oh, the Dragon King guys. Yeah, I don't remember what they were called, but I missed like my sister and I got there late because we did the math wrong on the start time, so we didn't get there till the start of the actual pay-per-view.
Okay.
So I may not have even seen that match. And I think Hangman had a match on the pre-show too that I didn't see. Like it was the Battle Royal, right?
I literally don't. I only remember.
Oh, here we go. It's Strong Hearts.
Yeah, there you go. Strong Hearts.
Yeah.
What I remember most is obviously the Cody and Dustin match. I want to rewatch that again to see if it holds up. And the main event and Moxley coming out. And I still have the video on my phone of Moxley coming out, which we all expected. We all expected him to be there just because that's how you got the information out. So, anyways, I wanted to share that because we are going to do that demo show, and I'll give folks enough heads up about it. I don't even know what we're going to call it yet. Like it's just going to be an attempt to do something creative and fun that we think will be cool. And Paul and Jeff, as the hosts of the Dynamite Show, they just recently kind of rewatched an old Dynamite episode, very infamous Dynamite episode, and they did a fun show on that. So I thought, we'll just do that. It's because it'll also be fun to see what holds up and what is like so 2019 and would not carry over very well into today's
I
wrestling.
just looked at the card and like
it's not fantastic.
If they tried to do this card now, like worst pay-per-view of all time is what people would be saying.
Is Britt on that show?
Yeah.
Who does she face?
Awesome Kong, Nyla Rose, and Kylie Ray.
Oh my God. I remember Kylie Ray.
Alico and Jack Evans against the Best Friends.
Yeah.
Aja Khan, Emi Sakura, and Yuka Sakazaki against Hikaru Shida, Riho, and Ryo Mizunami. I do remember that match being awesome, but we also had no idea who anybody was.
Yeah. It was not, it was very indie. Like they had an indie, it was indie DNA. This is a perfect way to end this. It was a hot crowd and the crowd was very forgiving, and because we wanted them to succeed.
I still do.
We still do.
I lean towards WWE because I like their production. I've been a fan my whole life almost, but I root for AEW because I want there to be healthy competition.
Yeah, so I want them to get some of their momentum back, which is a little bit harder because of TV and stuff. But yeah, man. Shout out to Miguel Rubio, who just got off of work. And Miguel Rubio is actually just booked. I think he's going to the Tokyo Dome soon for the Tanahashi retirement.
Him and Larry, I'm so jealous.
Miguel Rubio living the life.
Yeah.
Miguel Rubio is also coming to Vegas. I'll get to see him.
I know. I want to go so bad.
All right, we've been on long enough. I know I went a little long, but I just wanted to create some context about. And look, Ricky Starks. I'm really bummed that I'm not going to see what the best version of possible of him in WWE, but so be it. It doesn't always work out that way. I'm kind of bummed about it, but we'll be back. You'll be back on Wednesday, right after Dynamite, 20 minutes or so after Dynamite ends. Paul and Jeff get going. And when's the next show that I'm going to do on this network? Probably the post elimination chamber, the Sunday. John and I will do a Fight Game podcast Moss on this network, but I'm on F4W at least twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. Anyways, all right. Thank you all for hanging out, especially the folks who I was shouting out in the chat. Really appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and it gives us some timely things to also reply to. That's why I like reading comments. People listen on podcasts are like, I don't see any of this stuff, but I think it helps us create conversation. So I do like it. But thanks also to Paul for doing this. I know he hasn't been feeling fantastic of late, but I know he loves it. So I knew there was a possibility he would say yes. So, but that is it from here. So for Paul, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.